Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion with Thebe Phetogo, Tila Likunzi, and Tawanda Takura. I'm Fadzai Muchemwa. So Tila and Thebe are part of a residency that's part of Art Connection Africa. Art Connection Africa is a collaboration between KfW Stiftung and Triangle Network to foster visual art exchanges, capacity building, and informal learning activities within sub-Saharan Africa. The aim of the program is to stimulate exchanges within the Southern Africa region, where a number of the Triangle Network partners are located and they have contributed to the development of a local art scene. So I was a beneficiary of this program 2 years ago. Oh, is it yet 2 years ago? Yeah, 2019. So we're going to ask each one of you to introduce yourselves, and then we can chat. We'll start with you, Tawanda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tawanda Takura. I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm a sculptor. I work with found objects, particularly old shoes. So, yeah.
Okay. Tila?
Hi, everybody. I am Tila Likunzi. I'm an independent curator and researcher from Luanda. My current focus is on analysis and critique of photography, contemporary photography emerging from Africa.
Hi everyone, my name is Thebe Phetogo. I'm a painter from Botswana. My work is informed by my positionality as a Botswana artist, as a cis heterosexual male, and the different positionalities that lie therein, as well as my relationship to the medium of painting. And I usually work in a project-based manner.
Oh, I forgot to mention that Tawanda is a resident artist at Oxford Parks at the moment. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that residency is about and how your experience has been.
Okay, so the residency is mainly focused on experimentation, exploring, pushing more of my material and seeing what else I can explore within the context of my material. So yeah, the experience so far has been good. We just had an exhibition in collaboration with the Bag Factory, Guns and Rain in Bag Factory. And we had quite a turnout, which was really nice. Yeah. And I don't know if there's anything else you need to know.
Or maybe if you could elaborate what your residency is about.
Okay, so I'm working on a project so far titled Church, Not Honest Brokers. So I'm looking into activities that the church, the modern day church, is doing to the community and the repercussions that comes with it. So that is the subject that I'm focusing on. And in terms of my work, it is one of the main subjects that is quite central in how I work. So yeah, and I focus in my work with on issues to do with identity, issues to do with religion. So yeah, it is what I'm exploring at the moment.
Okay. And Thebe, you're almost done with your residency. How has that been, and what were you working on? I was in your studio earlier. and we didn't get a chance to talk about what that has been. Yeah.
In terms of like how the residency has been, just for me personally, the Bag Factory has been a space that I have kind of really wanted to kind of come and work at and be a part of. I had previously applied for a different program, and I was very excited to be able to participate in this program because in like the founding of the Bag Factory is closely tied to the founding of a space that I know very well in Botswana called the Tapong Visual Arts Center. And people like David Kulwane and Pet Mautla, like they held workshops in Botswana that eventually became a space, and that space was one of the first few places that I actually showed as an artist. So I was very happy to, I don't know, somehow be part of that conversation, whatever it is. And what was the other part of the question? What I'm working on?
Yeah.
Okay. So here, while I'm here, I've been working on a project called the Rogues Gallery. And as I mentioned before, my work is informed by kind of my positionality. So I had an idea for a project in mind here that I could work on here, but relating back to Botswana and looking at Botswana's history as an ongoing grand narrative or meta-narrative that kind of changes characters over time, it changes possibly storylines over time, and looking at figures within that unfolding narrative that can be considered rogues within that story. So those who stand within that ongoing story of Botswana and those who stand outside of it, and who gets to call who a rogue within that controlled environment. That makes sense.
Interesting. I'll come back to you about operating outside and within. Yeah, Tila, you want to say what your experience has been and what you're working on?
My being here began, let's say, 6-7 months ago when I began to follow African Mobilities 2.0, and the subjects that it brought up about urbanism and the kind of decolonial discourse that African Mobilities was vehicling attracted my attention to the theories of Abdul Malik Simon. And at the time I was beginning to look into emerging Angolan photography, and I noticed that what I was analyzing in the photography or seeing in the photography was speaking directly of these theories vehicled by African Mobilities. And I came upon the idea of making connections between emerging photography and theories on urbanism. And this is when I decided that when the opportunity to apply for the Bag Factory came up, I said, okay, this might be the perfect place for me to develop the research and the theories around it. And it has worked to be so. So I began to look into this in Luanda, and I had a vague outline of what to do. And then I came to Johannesburg, and I realized the two cities, although not too far from each other, they were both had similar and dissimilar aspects of, I'll call it being. And it made my research a lot more complex than I thought. While at the same time I had to correlate emerging photography with decolonial discourse on urbanism, I also had to learn a lot about photography itself, more like how to gaze at photography, not so much of the techniques, and why people are making the choices of the kind of emerging photography that I see happening today. So since I've been here, first it was the question of getting used to a different city, and then articulating all these different ideas together into a, what is now becoming, should be 2 essays, or the beginning of a series of essays on the topic of African major cities. The kind of representation of African urban life I'm seeing in emerging contemporary photography, and the links with the ongoing conversation about cities in the global south. So this is basically what my research is articulating as to kickstart my participation in this conversation. So I think that my being here and doing the residency, it has actually been helpful to help me join this conversation. The end result of it should be me contributing to this larger conversation about African presence in cities, an analysis of how we are in cities through photography.
Okay. Anyone can jump in and answer this one. You think residencies are beneficial? If yes, why? If not, why?
Yeah, I think they are really beneficial because there is an exchange of culture, there is an exchange of knowledge, and it gives an artist like myself an opportunity to explore some of the things that I want to push towards to, that are not very much, that I cannot push well in my own comfort space. So pushing from another space, a different space, it gives you a different perspective of things, and you get to understand that it's not only your story you're saying, but there's also someone else in that story, and there is always a connection between the two. So I feel as though residencies, they are and should be a recipe for every artist to partake in, because I can tell for myself they've really done me good. So yeah.
I have to agree when he says about being in a discomfort zone. Yeah, it's actually very helpful to be challenged. In the work, you think you know what you're doing and get challenged. Even if it doesn't change the course of your work, you do get challenged in a completely different context of the one where you normally produce your thinking. So yeah, it has been very useful in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd also agree with those sentiments. And also, just for me personally, for my own work, when I'm on residency, I tend to, the work almost becomes a bit context specific, or it adapts to the context in some ways. Because I've had a previous residency in Lagos, and then the work kind of developed around kind of my time there and what I was experiencing, which also relates to the concepts I was working with. But yeah, it does challenge you. It does also for me, residencies are great for me because in my work, like certain strains of my work, because I work project-based, so some projects aren't really about like delivering a message, so to speak. I'm really interested in people's response to that work in a way. It's another form of like research, like informal research in a way. You make work and then people's responses to it becomes something useful for you as well.
Yeah. Okay, oh, interesting. So I'm thinking, you come here, you have these amazing experiences. So kind of like you're mining Joburg for your own personal growth. But what do you leave for Joburg, for example? What are you leaving?
I mean, as I've said, there is a cultural exchange. So we are borrowing from each other. It's more like you are putting some fertilizer on each other. You are growing each other, sharing knowledge, making potential collaborations and more experiments. So yeah, it is an exchange.
Okay, so maybe what I'm asking is about what potential collaborations, contact have you had with the city, with the artists here? Something that is like or I've been working with this artist, because sometimes it's just that sometimes you go on residency and you are at Bag Factory Studios and you meet in the gallery space and you have coffee or you have lunch, and that's the extent of that contact. But beyond that, sometimes people just take from cities and move away.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm asking about that contact.
So during my stay, this time and even the previous time that I was on residency here, I have met quite interesting artists and have been opportuned to share and mostly to learn from them, because of my background, I didn't go to art school. So it is up to me to push myself. So I've met quite interesting people. I've met Usha, and we did have a really good conversation with Usha, and Gordon Froud. I've met, I've met quite a lot of artists actually, because I was staying at August House, so we would do studio visits. They come, we talk about my work. I go to their studios, we discuss. So, yeah.
Okay. And
maybe from my side, it would be, I don't know if it's necessarily leaving something, but there is the fact that something I've felt, or maybe something I'm putting on myself, of coming here to this space as a Botswana artist, and a certain responsibility that comes with that. Because, I mean, most of the people that I do meet don't know much about Botswana or the art space there. So addressing that kind of one-sided cultural hegemony, talking about, you know, what we're doing back home, because yeah, it's a very different art world, if you want to call it that. It's a and it's just not that visible. So maybe I'm leaving, like, I don't know, a silhouette, and then you can like look through and then kind of find a way back to other people back home somehow. I don't know if I've accomplished that, but that's something I would like to do. Yeah.
Tila?
Yes. Well, definitely one of the imprints that should be left of our presence. For me, for example, has been all the conversations I've had with the artists here at the factory, both formally and informally, and how many times has been helpful to bring new insight into my research. So I see this, well, in terms of the exchange, we actually managed to exchange a lot of different thinking of the different art practitioners across the region. So us being here also brings a wider vision of what's happening in the other countries in the region. We are sharing information about the different art industries and markets in the different countries in the region. And yeah, and the most important aspect for me has been all the thinking that has been shared. For example, I know that, I won't mention anyone now, but I know that at the end of my research, there are people that I will thank specifically for helping me here and there for exchanging concepts that I wasn't aware of, for example. And my also being aware of having exchanged concepts they weren't aware of. So I think it breaks a kind of sense of isolation, regional isolation, and it has been helpful for me to see us all as part of a big shared experience, which right now, of course, I'm limiting only to my region, but also our shared experience in Africa. And by us being here and having these opportunities to be here, it does help us create established relations across countries. Just to have an insight, like you said, you have an insight of what's happening across the border or 2 countries up, 1 country to the left or right. It's very useful for that. Well, we could also do this online, but it's not the same as being here.
Okay, Thebe, you spoke about operating from the inside and operating from outside. How has that informed your work here and your practice?
Possibly specific to my project, because this initial audience that's experiencing or seeing this work doesn't necessarily know the reference points, or the figures that kind of show up in that work, which is a portrait series that I'm working on. And it was, seeing the different levels of legibility, could it be legible if I kind of really obfuscated it completely, or what context clues can work here and which ones don't, that kind of thing as well. I think because especially this body of work will probably exist mostly outside of the country as well. It won't be exhibited back home. So what does also that mean? So those kinds of questions for me.
That you're working through?
Yeah, as I go through thinking through it, also painting through it,
So Tawanda, I know you work with second-hand shoes. These are very intimate objects. So how have you been sourcing material whilst you are here?
Yeah, so we've collaborated with the African Reclaimers organization. So they have been going around the neighborhood collecting the shoes. So we don't know exactly where they were sourcing the shoes, but they've been collecting all the shoes that I'm using right now in South Africa, so yeah.
Okay. I'll stop putting you guys on the spot and let the audience do that job for me. Yes.
Hi, my name is Edward. Maybe I've got two questions. One direct to Tawanda. Your art practice is currently now you're working on in terms of churches, and I assume it's the charismatic churches, and their roles in society. And I just want to know, I've got my own opinion in terms of, I think everybody has, about charismatic churches and the role that they play in terms of some of the role, well, for me, it's destructive. What inspired that? Can you tell us a bit what went
Okay. Well, yeah,
that's so one question. Okay, sorry. Okay. Before you answer, the other one, Tila, okay. So, photography is a very, difficult kind of thing in terms of literature. There isn't much written about photography from mainstream media, from even, if it's done, it's only remains in academic circles. So it doesn't actually filter in. Maybe one of the reasons that happens is why people ignore photography as an art form is because there isn't much literature. We don't know the kind of role that photography plays in our lives. Maybe talk about it a bit,
Okay. You can go first.
Okay. Yeah, so I've had a bit of the share of the modern day charismatic churches. And
sorry to interrupt. As a participant or just observer?
So the thing is, in my work, I'm speaking about the things that happen in my environment. And sometimes I'm directly involved in the practice to which the things that had happened to me, the things that I went through with these churches. And on the other side, I'm speaking as a spectator, watching from afar what is happening to other people. So I always bounce between those spaces. So what, what yeah, it's quite.
Oh, maybe,
You know,
maybe,
they- yeah.
Tawanda, you should talk specifically about what these charismatic churches mean in the context of Zimbabwe.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
we have a ton of those, and they're sprouting like mushrooms anyway. So I feel like it's a disintegration of mankind that is happening, and we are watching it, and we take part in it. You know, when someone uses someone's vulnerability to push their own gain, it happened to me. Yeah, it happened to me, and it's not always, ice and roses. He's really pushing. It always goes back to the issue of money.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what is. So that is one of my main subjects in how I work. So yeah, I've had a few share of my money, that went there. So it took me a while to actually realize, because I see like everyone is in this frantic space where they are always rushing in and out of these spaces, and no one is really taking time to just stand and watch, you see, because so many details are in the subliminal, and not most of us are willing to do that, to just see. So I feel like me talking about it, it's bringing more of an awareness to other people to actually just see what is happening. Because I feel like, the gypsies and the clowns are no longer in the circus. You find them in church now, and they are doing anything just to get your dollar. They are doing anything just to push you into that space where you become vulnerable and they exploit you. So that is mainly what I speak about in my work. So you will find that there is this identity crisis that is now in most of our societies, just because someone tells you you're going to be rich tomorrow, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be rich tomorrow. So it's one of those things that is happening, and no one really is. I don't think if people are, oblivious to this or not ready to address situations like that, because the church itself used to be the fabric of the community. We tend to run to the church when things go tough. Right now, every one of us is wearing a mask. That's slavery, you see. And yet the church was and is still supposed to address those situations, because they sell us these things. You're going to be healed. I can pray for you. You'll be, all those things. And now this situation hits, and themselves are in quarantine as us. So those are the.
I know someone is itching to ask Tawanda a question. Hold on. Let Tila answer his question before she forgets.
Okay. It was on photography and literature written about photography. Well, I guess this is one of the reasons why I entered into this research, so I could talk about photography beyond a mere curatorial perspective. A lot of my research is just looking to what others have written about photography so far. And the curious thing was that I began from the point of looking at emerging contemporary photography, and then I quickly jumped back and look at the beginnings of the use of photography in Africa. So I've just spent the past days looking at colonial photography in Africa, but at its purposes. Not its factual purposes, I think we're all aware of that, but what kind of language is behind photography, what is being communicated in the photo. What I can say for now is that this idea of looking at the codified language of the photo and what kind of performance, because I am an African looking at Africans, let's say 100 to 150 years ago. And then first there's that barrier of me confronting the images, and then understanding what the images mean for what purpose they were made, and what actually do the images say. For that, I need to retrain my gaze not to look at, for example, colonial photography for the same purposes that they were made, and not to make fantasies out of it either. So I was looking into some decolonial projects that are working on decolonizing these images, and while I arrived at my own conclusion about the language of the photography, I also realized that there are some clues in it that can enable us to have a different understanding of contemporary photography emerging now, because you're looking at persons against backgrounds, colonial photography, for example, backgrounds of villages or backgrounds of the bush, and you look at the emerging photography now, you're looking at the cities as a background. I don't think I'll be able to find or look into all the literature about photography that I would desire, because also there's the question that as an African researcher, for example, I'm looking for African sources of literature as well about photography. And then there are not many around, and then I need to broaden that to non-European sources, for example, and I need to look at these, I'll call them sciences that produce the photography. I need to look at what the missionaries were doing, what kind of photography produced, anthropologists, what they produce, traders, what they produce. And so you need to understand also for what purposes these disciplines of observation were created. This is just to say that this is where the stage where I am right now in my research, and I have this feeling that looking at that and examining these kind of codified languages or codified knowledge and the purposes that they were created, they will inform me to analyze what African photographers are creating today and why the images are being presented so, why the choice of backgrounds, why the choice of locations in the photography, or the techniques that are being used to create them. That said, then this is when I realized I thought I was going to do some research and write some curatorial words, and then I realized, okay, actually you have to write an essay. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm producing the actual literature of my analysis. So I think it's an ongoing, growing process. There are other people doing this, and strangely enough in this kind of research, there's a lot more information online because it's information that the sources are of decolonial projects. So there's not a lot of publications on print if you're going to look for a decolonial analysis of photography. I don't know if it answers your question, but this is more like what I have found through my research. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. So there's something I want you to backtrack. You said something about masks and slavery. What did you mean? And when you trying to make people aware of churches, who are these people? Because obviously it's not people who go, like, I don't know if they're at church. Sunday we're here at the Back Factory. Obviously it won't speak to a lot of artists. They are, and people within the arts or creative industry or with more liberal thinking. And what would it mean if you were to preach it? But if you were to say it or try and, make people aware, the ordinary person on the street who actively goes to church, what would it mean to your family members to try and make them aware of the exploitation of churches? And some people actually do need church because it helps. I've seen people change their life around because of that, having something as an anchor. And there are people who really need it, and then there are some who don't. But won't you? And in actual fact, if you were to go stand outside someone's church and say, and recently we've had that whole Prophet Bushiri situation, and literally the whole world, the whole country was like, guys, this guy is making a joke on you, but the whole world looked crazy. Like everyone who was saying that looked crazy and demonic in some sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a long question. Yeah, and the first one, what did you?
In terms of masks and slavery, I just want.
Right now you are wearing one.
Okay.
Is it up to you to wear one? Do you want to wear one?
I wouldn't want to wear one, but I also don't want to get sick or spread a sickness.
So that's the point. It's something that has been imposed because of a certain situation. And when I say the church used to be the fabric of the community, it was a place for us to go to. Mm-hmm. It was our safe haven. We expected the church itself to address these issues and perform the healings that they have been, advertising in medias and everything. That was supposed to be the ultimate answer. But to my surprise, they are in hiding like the rest of us. So when I say slavery, that is slavery. You're being enslaved because...
I think when it's...
No, can I finish? Yeah, because when you do something because you are told to do something, is it out of your will?
I think it's told to do something for the greater good.
No. Because if there was another option for that, would you still wear a mask?
Guys, okay. So you can have this one as a side conversation after. I'll let Bev ask a question and then you can go. Yeah.
I'm curious to ask about medium, content, and form. So each one of you has chosen a specific medium to communicate your content. And I'm curious to know whether, being in South Africa, being in Johannesburg, whether the residency is making you think about the choices that you're making around medium and around content. Like, has that had an impact on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot more resources available here, so that in executing the project, I can imagine, for example, Luanda, there's a limited availability of printing houses that work directly with art. Here, there's a lot more availability of that in variety of materials. It can help you think technically. That's the big difference I noticed here. So Luanda, I'm always thinking, okay, talent base, or do what you can with what's available. And here, there's a lot of technical expertise available. So for me, the technical aspects of executing the project, being here, that has been quite pivotal. I've learned a lot that I didn't know before. It's also one of the reasons why I wanted to come here.
Anyone else want to answer that, or I can let him ask a question? Yeah.
Okay, me in the first instance, I want to speak about the question of space. But before that, I want to say these kind of engagements are quite annoying, the exhibition and the idea of white walls in itself is, for me, has become very redundant. And you speak about church, man, and perhaps it goes to what she was saying, is that, do you think the people who are here care about that shit, or it's just middle class people who are interested in this thing sort of for the aesthetic of it? And if we believe that art has a social value, then do you think that this conversation that we're having here is helpful in any way, or does it just appeal to the sensibilities of the middle class? So I think we must reimagine. Of course, I'm speaking like grandly and sort of maybe it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think we must reimagine the idea of the gallery. And I think this has been going on for way too long. And as artists, we have not necessarily been preoccupied in how are we going to say these things to the people who need it the most, instead of entertaining white people who probably come to an open studio because they like your work and buy it. Of course we must eat. Of course we must drink wine. But if we believe that there's something that the work that we do there's something that the work that we do that it can change things, that it can change minds, do you think it's necessarily important to keep on having these conversations where there's 3 speakers in front, a moderator who's going to say, no, it's your turn to speak? Or do you think, don't we have it in our imagination to change this setup and present it in a way that sort of speaks to the people who need to hear it the most? You know, so on shoes.
I can also answer you on that.
You will
Yeah.
answer me. I must not finish my question.
Okay, you can finish.
Okay.
Or have I taken too long?
No, you haven't, but I'm listening to you, and I am breaking it down into 3 different answers I can give you about basically my comments on what you said. So I can just say 2 things very quickly, we can continue. One is about exiting the gallery. And for example, my being here is like a meeting about work in progress. So the 3 of us are working on something, and we're sharing ideas on what we're working about. So it's basically to inform each other and ourselves on what we are doing. So that's one part. The second part about exiting the gallery, which would be one of the questions I would have asked him if he has begun to think about the practices of, for example, he's planning an artwork, which is going to comment on the church and its role. And she asked one question that made me think of, I wonder if he's going to do a performance outside of a church to engage with the people as they go in or out. As for exiting the gallery, I've been thinking about that for the past 2 years. How do we exit the gallery and engage with the public? And I've been thinking about the many ways we can do it. So one of the reasons why we're here discussing this is to bring up the questions that you did. So I'm actually quite happy you brought up a total counter-narrative of what we're doing here. Again, it makes me rethink about how am I going, for example, take my project and make sure I'm communicating with the people that I'd like to hear about what I'm doing. So that was 2 answers to 2 of your comments, and now you can finish. I'm sorry, there's a third part coming.
Yeah, so maybe this is a comment. I think we must not do this anymore.
But I think we're not wasting time as well.
I definitely think that it's us just trying to appease people and in a way demonstrate how well we can speak about our art and how well we can explain our art.
So appease which people? Hey guys. Wait. Okay.
I mean,
I don't understand why I shouldn't finish my comment. You know, everyone is gonna get time unless there's a stopwatch.
go ahead.
Yeah.
So basically, I think this is quite unnecessary because it does not aid anyone who needs aid.
Okay.
In what way?
I'm like my brother. Your work is green. You are painting green. So your work. I don't even want to speak about your work. I'm speaking about. So please don't disturb me.
Yeah, but you know something.
Fair enough.
And I must not be policed in how I speak.
But
I must be given an opportunity to express myself in the way that I want.
It's okay, guys.
But
And of course,
Can
can
we
you speak about your work?
Yeah. Okay.
This young man would also like to ask.
Yeah. He has been waiting to ask a question.
Okay, a white person has obviously spoken, so we must take that and it moves as the law. So the master has given you an opportunity to speak. Go.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay, sister, I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
So your research, you said it on analyzing photography. So I don't know if you'll be able to answer this because it's still research in progress. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted, for my own practice, if I could learn something, if there's something noteworthy you've noted, while you've been doing the research, especially amongst like black photographers, if there's certain trends that are still going on, if there's certain things that have changed, not necessarily in form, but more in terms of meaning. Are people still saying the same thing? Is there something new? Not the kind of that.
Well, this part of my research is still looking at, which is finally ending now, looking at colonial photography and projects like decolonizing images. And the part that I'm interested in is, first of all, how we as Africans, Black people, got used to using photography as a medium. And this is why I had to look into the colonial photography. There's some clues when we began to use it and for what purposes we used photography. And this is where I am. If I were to make a prediction about next week when I should be starting looking at contemporary photography, so I'll jump from, let's say, 1800s, late 1800s, of course, anywhere in Africa, I'll jump straight to the 1950s, where we have, for example, photography emerging from Mali. So I need to look and analyze that as well. So I don't have a concrete answer about, what I cannot concretely answer is what African or Afro-descendant writers or analysts or curators have been writing about photography made by Africans. This is the only thing I cannot answer right now. I've read a lot of material written by white Americans or white Europeans, and I need to enter into the material written by Africans. Those, it's quite rare to find. So I'm still looking for it.
And to answer her and him, so you mentioned that you don't care. Like, that's where I caught from the whole, whatever you were saying. Anyway. So the thing is, I am speaking about the church because this is my story. And I am putting it out there because I believe that there were maybe not 1 million people that will indulge in that story, but only one person. So it is a way to start a conversation with someone, you see. For you to just take a minute and actually absorb the work and discuss. Because a lot of us, we do not have that time to actually engage in those conversations. Because when you speak about the church, a lot of people, they are not comfortable to talk about the church. I don't know how. I grew up in the church. I have seen what it has helped me with. And I also have seen the downfall part of it. That is why I get to see, because I've lived both sides, you see. So it doesn't necessarily mean what you care about or what you don't care about, because someone out there cares, you see. Because you are speaking about politics. Who cares? I could still ask you the same question. But there are people who are ready to answer those questions and who are yearning for that discussion. It might not be you too, but maybe someone out there or someone here would actually want to hear because they are going through the same thing. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to put across. And I don't know if I answer your question. Yeah.
I think I wanted to respond to the gentleman over here. And maybe it's a thing for all of us, where, but so you're sitting here in a panel discussion that is organized by what I believe is a community of people from Angola, Botswana, you know, all parts of the world, and have different connections. And that is a starting point. And then I wanted to ask you, but then what are you doing to counter this sort of setting? Because it's one thing which is also can be very counterproductive to sit and like critique gallery spaces, which critique is necessary and important for progress, but also just to critique and make noise. For what? What are you doing then that they're not doing, and what could you suggest to them to do something different? And I think this is a starting point. This is where the engagement starts and goes up. I mean, Bags Factory, how it started, if you are aware of the history, was a counter narrative of what the usual art space and art white cube goes for. It was started on a community by black people, for black people, that is inclusive to a lot of people, inclusive to women, to white women as well, who do amazing jobs, to include other people. But so it's really, and again, it's counterproductive for you to sit here and critique people who engage with the arts and actually enjoy it in some way, even though we complain about it. We still enjoy it because we still come in. So what are you going to do that's different, that's really going to engage? And I think it's up to all of us. It's really going to engage everyone, whether our work is political or religious or photography, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Elena. And I think because these guys are doing a residency, it's about exchanging ideas. It's about what we can do, not just to transform our practices here and back home, wherever home is, but what we can do as a community of artists and cultural practitioners. Yeah.
In the first instance, I don't think I'm only making noise, but there's something to be taken from what I'm saying. And secondly, I don't think this is counterproductive. So I'm here obviously inspired by the fact that there is free wine, but also that I can be in an exhibition to destroy the idea of the exhibition, in the same way that people can be in parliament to destroy the idea of parliament. And I'm saying, if Back Factory was really inclusive, it was going to go to Deep Sloot, it was going to go to Alexandra. I do not understand why we insist on using the vocabulary of inclusivity while we're in spaces that are exclusive. I think that is hypocrisy at the highest level. And I'm saying, if really we're doing art, and by the way, we don't enjoy art. Art's supposed to do something much more than just enjoyment. It's supposed to do something much more. And I'm saying, let's get out of the city. There are spaces that need these conversations much more than us here. And let us find a language to communicate with those people. Obviously, you won't get there and use the same methods of panel. I need to artists. Let's be creative about how we reach certain spaces. And I'm saying that it's only like a few organizations who have things in Soweto and Deep Sloot. But I'm just saying, Back Factory, if it was really about inclusivity, I think it would not be here in this small streets that no one, you can't even Uber to the street because it's you can't get here.
Okay.
So basically the point, and I'm wrapping up now.
Okay.
Basically the point that I'm trying to make, and perhaps maybe I'm not being eloquent or maybe decent enough in putting the point across. I'm just saying, let's leave middle class and bougie sensibilities. If we're really serious about art as something that has emancipatory possibilities and potentialities, then let's go to the people who need it the most. If you are going to speak about church and you want to speak about how people are exploited through church and how church uses the vulnerability of people to thrive and reach pastors, the people who go to church are not here. Like she said, it's a Sunday, you are not in church. If you are really serious about making a narrative and making a statement about church, go to the people who make sure that they wake up early in the morning and go to church, and they use even more than half of their salaries to contribute to the pastor's car to give Pastor Bushiri.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I wait before you answer. Okay, before you answer, 1 second. Tawanda, just one answer. So I think because also this is about process, so thank you for bringing that up, because they are still making work. So maybe how it's going to be shown, they are going to start thinking about how it's going to be shown. And then you can answer him, and then you had a question. Yes.
I have no problem with this thinking process, but I think if you are going to address me and the church issues that I've just brought up, the first question you should have asked is, have you done this before? Have you actually gone to the church and speak about it? Because you're only seeing me today, you don't know me. You don't know my story, you see. So I think that part you should have first gave me the courtesy to ask if I had, and probably that would have.
Although, I'm sorry to interrupt, but actually his comments weren't all that personal. They were actually general comments for all of us.
It's true, but I'm the one who
He was
spoke.
just using you
Exactly.
you as an example because you spoke at length
I
about.
understand that. But I'm just answering him because I brought up the church. And it doesn't necessarily mean that because people are here today, they are here because there's an event. And I wouldn't know who goes to church and who doesn't. Maybe there's one. So.
There's nothing novel about you.
The
church.
Yeah.
The church trope is even boring now, by the way, if we are going to go there. So you speaking about the church is not that personal. We've seen so many artworks that are centered around the idea of church. So even on technical issues, we will, if there's time.
Yeah, you two can talk about it.
Right? Even technically, we can take you through.
Yeah, so you guys can engage after this, yeah?
I wanted to make a comment. You've made an assumption that the purpose of art is emancipation. And I once had a piece of paper in my studio which said, what is the purpose of art? And whoever came into the studio, I asked them to write whatever their answer to that was. And everybody had a different answer, which was interesting to me. And I think that to make an assumption that we all believe art has the same purpose or we all see that it's going to do the same thing is actually wrong. I think art making and the creative process has a lot of different purposes in the world for a lot of different people.
That's a right thing to say. Why people are not content, they can make art so that they look at it and they sleep. You can't, as a black person, create art as if there was never a colonization, apartheid, and slavery. You can't create art as if there are no people who live on 1,000 rand a month. So for you, of course, man, you're so allowed. Art for you can be something that makes you smile, that makes you laugh. But I'm saying, as black people, we do not have that leisure because the kind of conditions that we're thrusted in, the kind of conditions that we exist in, do not allow us to create art as if there's not a black brother when you go to pre-taxi rank who's sleeping there on the street. And then you are going to make art because you want to what? Laugh.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so I think we've gone past our allocated time, so I will let you guys have a last say about anything that came up during this conversation. Yeah.
Actually, for me, it was a nice work meeting. I really did enjoy it. I did enjoy all the opinions because, we managed to exchange, exchange several opinions, constructive, counter-narrative. She was conciliatory as well, and it brought up the question of the purpose of art. Elena was quite critical, so I think I enjoyed it.
Perspectives. Yeah. You were the quietest one during this conversation.
I mean, yeah, I guess didn't get many questions, but that's fine. I mean, the work is still ongoing. I'm still here in the space, so it's not like this is the end of something. This is just another path or part of it, of the whole. So yeah, I'm glad I was part of this, and thank you. Yeah.
Tawanda, any last words?
I really did enjoy the talk. So unfortunate it has to come to an end anyway. But yeah.
It's just a logistical question. Where are you, my brother?
Oh, he's doing his residency at Oxford Parks.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's with Guns and Rain actually, but the physical space is in Rosebank.
I'd like to see,
Yeah.
Are you together? You came together.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. This was fun. Let's do it again. Thank you guys. Thank you.
No. Yeah. I'm gonna hide down and beat you up.
you did well.